The story starts 30 years prior, when a young boy named Jock is at a family Christmas gathering. He takes his cousins upstairs to reveal the gift their parents have gotten for them, not Santa. As a reward for breaking their Santa Claus illusion, they surrender all their candy as a form of payment. Soon after, Rick, who is Jock's uncle, comes upstairs and promptly scolds Jock for his misbehavior, telling they inform us that Santa Claus is indeed real, and that by the time night falls, he will have delivered Christmas presents to everyone. Jock, however, is skeptical and believes that Santa is merely another trick played on children. His uncle assures him that Santa will definitely make his appearance tomorrow. Fast forward to the present day, Jock has become an expert in pistachios. Not long after, Jock manages to sneak past the security checkpoints at a shopping mall, setting up the ideal situation for a distraction. He ignites a Christmas tree, creating the perfect chance to enter. Inside, they quickly insert a USB key into the computer cables. Outside, they heartlessly snatch a candy piece from a child watching. Meanwhile, at the mall, we meet Santa Claus, also called the Redhead, doing his yearly job with his bodyguard Callum, the elf from the North Pole. Shortly afterwards, Callum fires an obnoxious influencer who interrupts a family's meeting with Santa, insisting that Santa present him with a show with which he can make web content. Everyone seems to think it's the real Santa, but Callum takes his job very seriously and protects him at all costs. Callum returns home with Santa to take extra security measures. Fortunately for them, they make it to a safe haven where Santa magically transports himself and Callum across the universe. At the same time, Jacques is in his apartment enjoying a meal while watching a boxing match. He then gets a phone call and speaks with his mysterious employer, who has a job for him. The employer pays him half of what was promised and assures him that he will receive the remainder once he successfully locates the person he was assigned to find. Callum and Santa are back at the North Pole, hidden by a magical force field. He greets a beautiful woman called Mrs. Claus before Santa enters to do his daily 500 push-ups, this time in 5 minutes. Shortly afterwards, Callum and Santa have a heart-to-heart conversation. Callum informs Santa that he intends to retire, believing it's time for a change. He also mentions he loves all the kids he's met, but people don't respect holidays anymore and are getting mean. Santa tries to convince him it's still worth it, saying doing good deeds at Christmas unites people. Meanwhile, outside the Arctic, mercenaries breach the force field, which Callum notices when Santa's tower lights go out. Christmas begins to waver. He sets off to investigate, but when he calls the head of security in the area, no one answers. Callum goes to Santa's room and discovers that he has disappeared. Callum then locates the culprits and chases them across the North Pole on a snowmobile, but is unable to catch them before they manage to escape with Santa. Callum goes back to security headquarters to learn more about the attack. He finds out that only the wolf can track Santa. The wolf is a mercenary bounty hunter, working for the highest bidder and a ghost on the dark web. Even the FBI has tried to recruit him for years, but he's a freelancer and likely the world's best tracker. Meanwhile, Jacques' ex-wife Olivia asks him to pick up their son. Jacques goes to the school. At home, they talk, and Jacques advises never to trust anyone. Jacques leaves and returns to his apartment, noticing he's being followed. A battle breaks out, revealing they are mercenaries from the North Pole. Jacques fights back, escapes through a window, and ends up in another building. There, Zoe neutralizes and kidnaps him. She takes him to a remote North Pole area and informs him of the situation. Later, Jacques is confronted by Callum and Garcia, the giant polar bear's bodyguard, who realize he's a polar bear. Level 4 villain. Jacques elaborates that he received a generous payment from someone to locate him, yet he was unaware of the job's purpose or the identity of the person being tracked. Zoe discloses to him that Santa Claus has been abducted, which astonishes him because he was under the impression that Santa Claus himself was kidnapped, and he doesn't believe in myths like Santa Claus. However, Zoe reassures him that all mythological creatures are indeed real. Zoe places a tracer on them until they have completed their mission, as they don't trust Jacques. In Contresayer, they team up to save Santa Claus. Meanwhile, far from the North Pole, Santa wakes up in a cell where he meets his captor, a young woman named Grilla. Later, the young woman connects Santa to a machine that sucks up his energy to power his weapon, which is none other than a magical snowball. To find Santa Claus, Jock and Callum first go through the gate of a toy store before pushing a toy car into the middle of them. On the way, Jock asks Callum if he's just one of Santa's security guards. Callum replies that he is, and that he also does other jobs. Soon after, they arrive at their destination, Aruba, where they find the man who made the deal between Jock and the villain, a boy called Ted. Callum faces his boss and learns that Grilla, the Christmas witch, is the villain. This happens after Ted writes her name in the sand. But then, James foolishly says his own name aloud, unaware that Grilla can hear it. Instantly, the mood shifts, and Grilla uses Ted to communicate with Callum, threatening to punish everyone on Santa's naughty list. Callum tells her that he really needs Santa to return, but she continues to insist on punishing the bad guys. Then, Zoe arrives at the location to meet the boys, and Callum suggests that a strange brother of Santa is actually working with Grilla. He claims that Maura doesn't have the necessary skill to enter her brother's lair, so Callum and Jock will need to sneak in. Meanwhile, Jock gets a call from Olivia, who reproaches him for not planning to attend Dylan's concert. Jock talks with Callum about Dylan and confesses that he hasn't always been the greatest father to him. They enter quietly, but Jock makes an error when he attempts to take a piece of gold from the den because he mistakenly forgot to retrieve it. He ruins everything by inadvertently alerting Krampus to their presence. They end up being captured and are imprisoned before being brought to meet Krampus. Callum attempts to explain the situation to Krampus, telling him that his brother is in desperate need of immediate help. However, Krampus shows no interest, believing that Callum is laying the blame on him. Krampus intends to hold Callum as a prisoner until Jack steps up to challenge Krampus to a game of Cruzat with Callum. This game involves withstanding a strong slap from Krampus. Callum makes an effort to persuade Krampus to assist him, but Krampus remains indifferent and uninterested. The game starts with Krampus giving a slap to Callum, but things end poorly for him. Before Callum manages to get on his feet, Jack activates a splint for Callum's arm. This allows Callum to deliver a massive slap to Krampus, knocking him down and giving Jack and Callum the chance to make their escape. Callum praises Jack for his brilliant idea. When they reach their vehicle, Callum discovers a packet of Grilla addressed to Jack, but Jack declines to open it. Shortly afterwards, Jack receives a video call from his son Dylan, disappointed that he didn't make it to his concert. He immediately warns his father not to send him any more packages, but that's when Jack realizes it's a gift from Grilla. Unfortunately, Dylan opens and touches the gift, which teleports him into Grilla's lair. With no other choice, Jack decides to take his orb and set off in search of his son, Dylan. They end up in Grilla's lair, amazed by the orb's functionality, planning to rid the world of evil humans and purify Earth. After leaving, Jock apologizes to Dylan for being a bad father. Dylan forgives Jock, and Jock's improvement as a villain lets them grow and leave the world. Meanwhile, with Zoe having placed a tracker on Jack, she and Callum find out Jack and Dylan are at the... This implies Grilla never moved Santa far from the North Pole. They also discover that Grilla's henchmen are shapeshifters, taking over the North Pole by posing as Mrs. Claus and other guards. Fortunately, Jock is seen by Callum at Dylan's house, and together with Zoe, they uncover Grilla's plan to use Santa to power his sleigh and deliver globes to the North Pole, and imprisons anyone he deems to be a villain. He also frees Mrs. Claus, Garcia, and others before setting off in pursuit of Grilla. A fight ensues between the two, but Grilla gets the upper hand first, stolen and sends Grilla into the void. Callum reaches Santa and tries to wake him up, but once again, Grilla reappears in his true form, a giant, mysterious sphere with tentacles. He attacks them, but Krampus arrives with his sleigh to lend a hand. Once again, Krampus gets into a fight with Grilla, who throws him around. Fortunately, Santa regains consciousness and summons his queens to attack Grilla, who punches her in the air until she falls into his pile of globes, trapping her inside one of them. Later, Zoe takes her into custody. Everyone rushes to get Santa ready to do his job before Christmas. Callum, Jack, and Dylan join him on a trip around the world, watching Santa deliver gifts and bring joy to children everywhere. Callum observes Jock and Dylan bond, and for a moment sees the child in Jock. This is enough for Callum, who informs Santa that he has changed his mind about retiring. Santa then takes both of them home,